For today's gospel, we happen to hear one of the earliest, if not the earliest, exorcism story. Because I'll remind you, we're still in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1. So this is still the beginning of the earliest gospel. And the point of this story is that Jesus has true authority over basically everything. Even the demons have no choice but to respond to his commands. And that is a sign to us that Jesus is who he says he is, the Son of God, maker of heaven and earth. And as a little piece of biblical trivia for you, in the Bible, Jesus is never actually given this power. He just sort of has it, presumably from the beginning, and he just hasn't needed to use it until now. So to talk about demons as generically as possible, we might describe them as harmful external forces. Okay? They are things that are not good for us, that are outside our control. Because let's be fair, there are many, many things in life that are not good for us, which are somehow under our control. Case in point, our diet. We're largely in control of what we put in our bodies. And if you're fearful of things that are bad for you, pesticides, preservatives, additives, if you're worried about that, you can do something about it. You absolutely can grow your own pesticide-free food in a garden if you're willing to put in the work. But things change, the dynamic changes, when it's things that are outside of our control. I'm talking inoperable cancer. I'm talking about random acts of violence. I'm talking about dangerously bad weather. In these sorts of situations, we really have no choice. We reach a point where we can't do anything more about it, and we just sort of have to hope and pray that it works out for us in the end. So that's kind of a tricky thing. But the lesson that we have to learn today is that Christ is above all of that. Okay? Whatever natural evils there may be in the world, natural chaos you might say, Christ, his authority is above all of that. It is stronger and deeper than any of that. When God is at the helm, and he is, the influence of the evils of the world can only reach so far. They can cause damage, I'm not denying that. But the evils of the world, whether they are literal or figurative, they don't get the final word. And they do not get the last laugh. Now, mind you, we should still care. We should still be on guard. We should still take it seriously that those evils are out there. I've got a little story I'd like to share about feeling powerless in life. If my memory serves me correctly, my brother was confirmed in 2005. I might be off by a year. Well, there was a girl in his confirmation class who attempted to take her own life pretty quickly, pretty close to the confirmation date. And she failed. She survived just fine. She made a full recovery. Biologically speaking, there was no lasting damage. But shortly after her period of recovery, she started hearing voices. And she heard these voices every day. And what they were telling her was they were taunting her and demanding her that she finish the job. So she knew it was wrong. And she knew that these voices were not acting out of her best interest. But they didn't leave her alone, and it drove her to the brink of madness. To the best of my knowledge, she didn't get confirmed that year. She wasn't close to my brother. I wasn't a priest yet. I have no further information besides that which I just shared. So frankly, your guess is as good as mine when it comes to how that story ends. But regardless of the details, she certainly deserves our pity, because that's a heck of a thing to go through in life. No doubt about that. And I am leaving it to your personal interpretation as to whether or not those voices were actual entities or if that was some sort of psychological malady. Because for her at the time, that question didn't mean anything, because it felt real to her no matter what. She had an experience that was real, regardless of the explanation. And I share that with you today. First of all, it's the story that people tend to take seriously. But second of all, it is the kind of story that is easy for us to enter into. We can put ourselves in her place. Can't we imagine what that might be like? To be tormented like that nonstop. It is terrifying to be powerless in the face of something harmful, dangerous, or outright malicious. And every once in a while, like today, we need to acknowledge that fear. We shouldn't deny it forever. That makes us vulnerable. Control in life is not a guarantee. But chin up, because that is not the end of the lesson. Because Christ is never far from us. He is never far from us, even when things seem totally hopeless. Okay, that power over unclean spirits that Jesus had in the gospel, that is still in effect today. When we call upon the grace of Christ, we have tremendous strength at our service. Absolutely. But there's a catch. Sorry to say it, there is a catch. Jesus Christ is not a magic spell. We can't just wave our hands around the air and expect immediate results. That's not the way it works. To pray is to ask. To pray is to ask. And to trust in the Lord means to understand that some suffering and injustice is meant to be endured. In other words, God will not automatically take our pain away, no matter how politely or desperately we ask him to do so. A lot of people have trouble understanding that. A lot of people struggle with that. And there is no pithy one-liner that makes it any easier to understand. This is just a part of life that is difficult to come to terms with. But nevertheless, the main point today is still in effect. Christ is the ultimate authority. There is nothing in heaven or on earth that does not ultimately and eventually answer to him. That's even true for demons. They have a final judgment, or at least something kind of similar to a final judgment. Take my word for it. It is not going to end well for them or those who ally with them. That is not the winning team. So when we suffer sicknesses, cruelties, outright and literal evil, we can and should turn back to him. For it is when we are weak, powerless, and not in control that we most clearly see the saving power of God. For he is the one who has true authority over all things in heaven and on earth.